Are you thinking about traveling outside the United States while you have an active immigration case, but you're not sure if it could affect your situation or create unexpected problems that could impact your future? This is a very common question, especially for people who want to visit family, take a vacation, or handle personal matters abroad. However, what many people don't realize is that leaving the country while your immigration case is pending can have serious consequences, and in some situations, it could negatively impact your case if it is not done correctly. In this video, we're going to explain what you need to consider before traveling, the most important risks involved, and why it is essential to understand your situation before making any decisions. When you have an active immigration case, your legal situation is being processed within the United States, and any action you take can influence how your case moves forward. Leaving the country during this time is not always a simple decision, because in some situations, it may be interpreted as abandoning your application or stepping away from your process. Many people assume that they can leave the country for a short trip and return without any issues, especially if the trip is for a valid reason, but the reality is that not all cases are the same, and not everyone faces the same risks. That is why it is important to understand that traveling can have legal consequences that may completely change your immigration situation. Even small details, such as the exact dates of the charges and the specific legal classification, can be critical in determining your options. One of the most important consequences is that, in certain cases, your application may be considered abandoned if you leave the United States without meeting the proper requirements. This means that you could lose the progress you have made, even if you have been waiting for months or years for a decision. Additionally, depending on your immigration history, leaving the country could trigger restrictions that affect your ability to return, making it more difficult or even impossible to re-enter the United States for a period of time. There is also the risk that, when attempting to return, you may face issues at the port of entry if your situation is not clearly documented or if you do not have the appropriate authorization. In some cases, individuals need a specific type of authorization before traveling in order to avoid negatively affecting their immigration process. This type of authorization allows a person to leave the country and return without their application being considered abandoned, but it does not apply to everyone, and it does not guarantee entry in all situations. For that reason, it is extremely important not to assume that traveling is safe, but instead to verify whether it is appropriate in your specific case and whether you have the necessary permissions in place. One of the most common mistakes people make is comparing their situation to someone else's experience. You may have heard someone say that they traveled and came back without any issues, but in immigration law, small details can completely change the outcome of a case. Factors such as how you entered the United States, your immigration history, the type of application you have, and how long you have been in the country can all play a role in determining the risks involved. This means that two people with seemingly similar situations can face very different outcomes when it comes to traveling. Before making the decision to travel, it is essential to carefully evaluate your case and understand the potential consequences. Traveling without fully understanding the risks can delay your process, affect your eligibility, or create complications that could have been avoided, especially when those decisions are made without reviewing the legal details of your case. That is why it is always recommended to consult with a professional who can review your situation, identify any risks, and guide you on the safest course of action. So, can you travel while your immigration case is pending? The answer is, it depends on your specific situation and the details of your case. In some cases, it may be possible to travel without affecting your process, but in others, it could represent a significant risk if the proper steps are not taken. The most important thing is to avoid making decisions based on assumptions or other people's experiences, and instead rely on accurate information that applies directly to your case, especially when your immigration future may depend on those decisions. Not all charges will prevent you from adjusting your status, and many people have options they are unaware of simply because they have never had a professional review of their case. The most important step is to make informed decisions based on accurate information, rather than relying on rumors, advice from non-professionals, or comparing yourself to others who may have had very different circumstances. If you are considering traveling and want to understand your options before leaving the country, contact us.